Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Commander Banter, a deck tech. This one is for an Esper deck today, Oloro Ageless Ascetic. He is a 6 converted mana cost with white, blue, and black. That is your color identity, and he is a giant soldier legend who is 4/5. Beginning of your upkeep, gain 2 life. Whenever you gain life, you can pay 1 mana. If you do, draw a card, and each opponent loses 1 life. Beginning of your upkeep, if Oloro Ageless Ascetic is in the command zone, you gain 2 life. The command zone is where the commander sits, like right there. We'll say he sits in the command zone, he's over here. That's where he starts the game at. So even when he's not in play, he's gaining a life, so he has value. And into the deck itself with our instants and sorceries, with our removal suite. Swords to Plowshares, exile target creature. Controller gains life equal to its power. Path to Exile, another instant for 1 white. Exile target creature. Its controller may search its library for a basic land card and put it into play tapped. Here's another card, Demonic Tutor, 2 converted mana cost. Go find any card in your library, put it into your hand, reshuffle your library afterwards. Death Grasp. 1 white, 1 black X. X is whatever you want to pay. Deals X damage to target creature or player, gain X life. Very simple. Cyclonic Rift should be in every blue EDH deck ever until this card gets banned from EDH, which I'm sure will eventually happen. But 2 mana, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Or you can overload it for 7 and replace the word target with each. So it will read instead, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. It's a one-sided board wipe. Great card. Sphinx Revelation. 2 blue, 1 white, X. Gain X life, draw X cards. Remember, X is whatever you want to pay. You want to gain life in this deck, and you want to draw cards in this deck. This does both. Anguished Unmaking, some more removal. 3 converted mana cost, exile target non-land permanent at instant speed. You lose 3 life. Exile means to remove it from the game. Means it is no longer a problem. Toxic Deluge. It's 3 converted mana cost. At an additional cost to cast Toxic Deluge, pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. Probably the best removal in Commander. Gets rid of Indestructible and everything else that's irritating. Capsize. 2 blue, 1 other. Return target permanent to its owner's hand with buyback of 3. If you pay the buyback when you cast this, you put it back in your hand after it resolves. So you can do it again. Return to Dust. This is 4 mana to remove target artifact or enchantment spell from the game. And if you cast her in the main phase, you can choose another artifact or enchantment to remove from the game. Debt to the Deathless. Always hard to say. 2 white, 2 black, X. Each opponent loses 2 times X life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. That's a finisher. Utter End. This exiles target non-land permanent at instant speed for 4 mana. That's all there is to it. Wrath of God is Wrath of God. It blows up all creatures and they can't regenerate. Maybe your Wrath of God's getting countered, then you have Supreme Verdict. It's a little harder to cast, but it can't be countered and it destroys all creatures. There's a few combos in this deck. And then there's also just key cards you might want. For that, you want Diabolic Revelation for 2 black, 3 generic, and X. Search your library for X cards, put those cards in your hand, shuffle your library. You'll get every piece of anything that you could ever need. Any removal you need, any Planeswalker you need, any artifact you need, any answer you need. Akroma's Vengeance. This is 6 converted mana cost to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Or you can cycle it for 3, discard this card, and draw a card. If you don't need it, it's a card that can replace itself. Very useful. You'll probably need it for something. Like this, Merciless Eviction. 6 converted mana cost, choose 1, exile all artifacts, or exile all creatures, or exile all enchantments, or exile all planeswalkers. Pick your poison, and remove it from the game. Dig Through Time. You can put Treasure Cruise here. You remove cards from the graveyard with Delve to pay for this. You don't want to cast this hard for 8. You want to cast it for like 2 blue or something. But then you look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of those cards into your hand, the rest of the bottom of the library in any order. When you go 7 cards deep, you usually get what you want. Creatures. Soul Warden. Whenever any other creature comes into play, gain 1 life. Very simple to see why this is here. Snapcaster Mage. You just saw all those instants and sorceries. You want to cast them again. Snapcaster Mage is your friend. Gives anything in the graveyard that's an instant or sorcery flashback until end of turn. And he has Flash himself, so you can do some really neat tricks with him. Stoneforge Mystic. This deck has lots of equipment. When she enters the battlefield, you can go get whatever equipment you want, show it to everybody, put it in your hand, and she also helps you play that equipment for dirt cheap if she survives a turn and you're able to tap her. Because remember, when you cast them, they don't have haste. They don't do anything the first turn. It's a Burnished Heart. And when you burst it by paying 3 and sacrificing it, you put 2 basic land cards from your deck onto the battlefield into play tapped. So, he's a useful little artifact. So you saw some cards that do things when they enter play, like when Baby Nyx jumps into play here, she does stuff. So Eldrazi Displacer is kind of a cornerstone of this deck. 3 mana for a 3/3 that is colorless because of Devoid. But you can pay a colorless mana and 2 of anything else. Exile target creature. Return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Snapcaster Mage is a very, very good target for this spell. Stoneforge Mystic gets you more equipment if you want to do that. There's lots of things you can do. Etched Champion. This is a 3 mana 2/2, but it has Metalcraft. It has protection from all colors as long as you control 3 or more artifacts, which makes him impossible to block pretty much. Except by artifact dudes. But when you have him equipped with enough stuff, nothing's going to get in his way very good. Archaeomancer. See Eldrazi Displacer. Because when this enters the battlefield for 4 mana, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So you play it, get a spell, blink it with Eldrazi Displacer, get another spell, keep going like that. Kripkesh should be on any EDH deck that runs black and lots of swamps. 4 mana for a 2/2, it has Extort. Extort says whenever you cast a spell, if you have a permanent in play with Extort, you can pay 1 mana per permanent of white or black. And then each opponent loses 1 life and you gain that much life. Whenever you tap a swamp for mana, it adds an additional black to your mana pool in addition to what mana it would already produce. Makes all your swamps tap for 2 instead of 1. That comes into play later. Solemn Simulacrum, the sad robot. When he comes into the battlefield, you can get a basic land put into play tapped. When he dies, you can draw a card. Another Eldrazi Displacer target if you want to clear your deck out of basic lands. Triskelion comes into play with 3 counters on him. Remove a counter from him, he deals 1 damage to target creature or player. He combos infinitely with Mikaeus the Unhallowed, who is 6 mana for a 5/5 Intimidate, which means only black and artifact creatures can block him. Whenever a human deals damage to you, you destroy that human. Other non-human creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Undying, which means when they die, if they died without a +1/+1 counter on them, bring it back into play and put an extra +1/+1 counter on it. So you use 2 of the counters to kill the Triskelion at the end of what you're doing, and the rest of the counters you throw at the opponent's face. You'll produce an infinite loop. Cuckoo Show Evening Star, 6 mana 5/5 Legendary Dragon Spirit. When it dies, each opponent loses 5 life. Gain life equal to life lost this way. If you can get him back from the graveyard, this is just massive life swing, especially in a multiplayer game. Torrential Gearhulk. Snapcaster Mage on steroids. It's a 5/6 flash for 6. When Torrential Gearhulk enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into the graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So he only gets instants, but he casts them for free for you. Plus, he's a 5/6 body. Sphinx of the Steel Wind. I love this card. Also an artifact. 8 converted mana cost, though, but it has Flying First Strike, Vigilance, which means it doesn't tap to attack, Lifelink, which means all damage it does gains you that much life, Protection from red, and Protection from green. Cannot be blocked, targeted by, or damaged by red or green sources. Solid beat stick, this one. Artifacts. Elixir of Immortality. Pay 1 to cast it, 2, tap, gain 5 life. Shuffle Elixir of Immortality and your entire graveyard into their owner's library, so you can reuse stuff. Also, if someone's trying to mill you out, that will prevent it, pretty much. Sol Ring, because every commander deck just about needs a Sol Ring. Expedition Map. Go get any land you need. Any land at all. Doesn't have to be a basic, can be any land. Very good card. Thopter Foundry. One white or one black and a blue. For an artifact that has pay 1, sacrifice non-token artifact. Put a 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature token with flying onto the battlefield, you gain 1 life. This combos infinitely with Sword of the Meek. 2 mana. Equip creature gets +1/+2. Equip it for 2 mana. Whenever a 1/1 creature comes into the battlefield under your control, you may return Sword of the Meek from the graveyard to play and attach to that creature. So the non-token artifact you're sacrificing to the Thopter Foundry should always be Sword of the Meek. Because it'll get sacrificed, go to the graveyard, you get your 1/1, this comes into play, and equips itself to the 1/1. You pay another mana, sacrifice this again, you get a 1/1, this comes into play, equipped to it. And as long as you have mana, you have infinite tokens. Nim Deathmantle, for when something you don't want to die dies. Not only does this equipment give you +2/+2, intimidate, and makes you a black zombie, but whenever any non-token creature is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, that means opponent's creatures, your creatures, whatever, you can pay 4. If you do, return that creature to play under your control and attach Nim Deathmantle to it. I usually only use this for my dudes, because I'm not really sure how the interaction works with other people's dudes. But I know this keeps my dudes from dying, and it makes it an excellent, excellent card to put in this deck. Swiftfoot Boots. Equip creature has hexproof and haste, means only you can target it, your opponents can't. Crucible of Worlds. You can play land cards from your graveyard as though they were in your hand. This has many, many uses, as you'll see later. Chromatic Lantern. This makes all your lands tap for any color of mana that you want, and this taps for any color of mana that you want all by itself for 3 mana. New card. Inspiring Statuary. 3 mana for an artifact. Non-artifact spells you cast have Improvise, which means you can tap an artifact to pay for 1 generic mana of that spell. So that's non-artifact spells. So anything non-artifact, all the artifacts in this deck can help to cast. Sword of Body and Mind. Give your dude pro-green, pro-blue, +2/+2, and when the equipped creature deals damage to a player, put a 2/2 green wolf token onto the battlefield, and then the person who took damage puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And they probably don't have an Elixir of Immortality to deal with this. Darksteel Plate. Darksteel Plate's indestructible. The equipped creature is indestructible. That should pretty much explain to you why it's there. Oblivion Stone. Targeted removal. 3 mana to play it. 4 mana to tap it and put a fate counter on target permanent. Pay 5. Tap. Sacrifice Oblivion Stone. Destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter on it, and then remove fate counters from all permanents. Well of Lost Dreams. Whenever you gain life, pay X, where X's amount is less than or equal to the life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. Just more card draw off the life you're gaining. Thran Dynamo. Simple card. 4 mana. But then you could tap it and add 3 mana to your mana pool, so then, you accelerate over time. Conjurer's Closet. It's a backup Eldrazi Displacer. Beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, return to the battlefield under your control. So all those blank effects that you're looking for in your creatures, this will get you another use out of them. Gilded Lotus. It's 5 mana, but you can tap it. Add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Mana fixing, and it's pretty. Batterskull. 5 mana to cast this, but it's a living weapon, so when it comes into play, it comes equipped to a 0/0 germ token, so you don't even have to equip it right away. Equipped creature gets +4/+4 and has vigilance and lifelink. Doesn't have to attack, gain life for each damage it does. You can also pay 3, return Batterskull to its owner's hand. You can also equip it for 5. Great on Etch Champion, great just on the germ by itself. The fact that it can save itself for 3 mana, great, great card. Darksteel Forge. It costs 9 mana to play this, but it's an artifact, and artifacts you control have indestructible. So, that makes a lot of your deck really hard to deal with. Enchantments. For 1 black, Phyrexian Reclamation. Pay 2 mana, pay 2 life. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Reuse your dudes. This is another Extort trigger, Blind Obedience. For 2 mana, artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped and puts Extort on your spells. Slows them down, gains the advantage. Phyrexian Arena. Draw a card. Lose 1 life during your upkeep. Extra card a turn. Done. Greed. Maybe 1 card a turn isn't enough for you. Well, we have Greed. You can barter for gold, pay 2 life, pay a black, and draw a card. Whenever you want. Sanguine Bond. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. I think that explains itself. Planeswalkers. Tezzeret. Agent of Bolas. This dude goes and gets your artifacts. This dude makes artifacts into 5/5 creatures, and this dude makes target player lose X life and gain X, and you gain X life, where X is twice the number of artifacts you control. You'll see why he's here. Finisher. Narset Transcendent. This one's for all our instants and sorceries. I don't really use the +1 that much, but that -2 of when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell, it gains rebound, which means it'll cast again next turn. And the emblem, if you can get to it, says your opponents can't cast non-creature spells, which cuts off most of their deck. It's a great card. Liliana Vess. Much like Narset, I use her for her middle ability, the one that says Vampiric Tutor. Search your library for a card, shuffle your library, put that card on top of it. I've added this recently. It's actually worked out really well. Tezzeret, Master of Metal. Costs 6 to play for 5 loyalty, but he can go get you artifacts. Makes target opponent lose life equal to the number of artifacts you control, the other Tezzeret's ultimate. Or -8. Gain control of all artifacts and all creatures target opponent controls. That'll win you the game right there. Lands. Nice and simple. Let's go through these real quick. It's mostly just color fixing. We have islands. 2 islands, in fact. We have swamps. 3 swamps. We have 3 plains. We have a Terramorphic Expanse, which is kind of like a fetch land for basics. We have Evolving Wilds, which is the same thing. We have Bloodstained Mire. Go get your swamp. We have Polluted Delta. Go get you an island or a swamp. Flooded Strand. Go get you an island or a plains. Windswept Heath. Go get you a plains because you don't have forests. Temple of Silence is a scry land for white and black. Godless Shrine. And his battlefield tap unless you pay 2 life. Taps for white or black. Temple of Deceit, the scry land but for blue and black. Sunken Hollow. Enters the battlefield tap unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Adds taps for blue or black. Taps for blue or black, Watery Grave does. Enters battlefield tap unless you pay 2 life. Celestial Colonnade. Turns into a dude. That's primarily why it's there. It also taps for white and blue. Prairie Stream. Enters the battlefield tap unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Taps for white and blue. Hallowed Fountain, taps for white and blue. 2 life, or it comes into play tapped. Azorius Chancery. Enters battlefield tap. You gotta return a land you control to your owner's hand, but it taps for both a white and a blue. Orisab Basilica is the same thing, but it taps for a white and a black. Dimir Aqueduct is the same thing, but it taps for a blue and a black. Arcane Sanctum enters the battlefield tap, but it taps for all 3 colors that you need. Glimmer Void taps for any color, but you have to have an artifact out at your end step or this blows up. Spire of Industry is a new card. It works just like Glimmer Void, except it doesn't blow up. It just hurts to tap for mana. It only works if you have an artifact. Mana Confluence. Taps for any mana. Hurts you. Forbidden Orchard. Taps for any mana. Gives your opponent a 1/1 colorless dude. You're alright with that, though. City of Brass. Taps for any mana. Does 1 damage to you when you tap it. Command Tower. Taps for any mana of your commander's identity. Cabal Coffers. Add a black to your mana pool for each swamp you control if you pay 2 and tap it. Here's the key land. Turns all your lands into swamps, so your Crypt Gas and your Cabal Coffers will generate way more mana. Vesuva enters the battlefield tapped as a clone of target land. Valrash Stronghold. 1 to black, tap, put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. Academy Ruins. 1 to blue, tap, put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. Rogue's Passage. Pay 4, tap, target creature can't be blocked this turn. That'll win you the game by itself. Ghost Quarter. You can sacrifice this, destroy target land, and then go get a basic. You can also reuse this with Crucible of Worlds. So that's the Oloro deck in a nutshell. Tell me what you think about it. Like, comment, subscribe, and show some support for Commander Banter so I know that you want to see more of this because I enjoy doing this. What would you add to this deck? I'd add a Shroom the Hegemon because I can't believe it's not in there. But you let me know what else you'd add. Until next time, this is Dottie saying bye-bye.